What's up, guys? 1-1 yesterday, a slight loss, unfortunately. Michigan did get there in that close battle against Alabama, so at least there was that. Iowa, I think at least the Iowa game was not as lopsided as the final score made it look. They were down 14-0 at the half. Their offense is just awful, man. I think they gave up at least 2 defensive touchdowns in the game. It's just there was just nothing that could really be done about that. I mean, I don't think their defense really played that badly. The game really unraveled near the end. That sucked. Still definitely it was the wrong side, although I just don't think it was quite as bad as the final score looked. And both the college football games, I guess, kind of lived up to the hype as the Michigan-Alabama game went into overtime. And that was back and forth. And then the Texas-Washington game, Texas, I don't think ever had the lead in the game, but they kept tying the game back up and keeping it close. And then Washington looked like they'd finally put the game away. And then they did have a really bad fourth quarter, but it still looked like they'd put the game away. And then they had that running back injury, so they couldn't run out. They could have run the clock down like 15 seconds if that didn't happen, but it did. So then like 30 seconds remained on the clock, 30 seconds in addition to that. So they had to punt with like 50 seconds left almost. And it allowed Texas to actually march pretty much down the field and get easily into scoring range. And they could have gotten the touchdown at the end. They had that one weird play where they threw it. So like the check down, he barely got out of bounds. That was a weird play. They should have taken 2 shots at the end zone at the end there instead of 1 out of the 2, but that was weird. So Texas had the shots at the end. They had chances to potentially win that game at the end. Crazy games. We'll see how my thoughts on the college championship upcoming next week adapt as we see what the market starts doing. We'll see what happens with that. Michigan is a 4.5-point favorite right now, which seems short, but it almost seems like too short, or it almost seems too easy to take Michigan. So I don't know. We'll see what my thoughts wind up being on that. Moving to today's slate, we have I'm going to skip the NBA card today, man. The NBA card doesn't have anything that I find to be really that interesting on it today. I think the Sacramento Kings are returning home from a road trip, I believe. So there's that. So they're not in a really good spot. And they're up against and they won the last 2 on the road trip, beating the Grizzlies in blowout fashion. They're up against the Charlotte Hornets, who now are potentially turning into the Detroit Pistons. I don't think it'll go that far, but they do have a lot of losses in a row. They have, 13 losses in a row now or something like that. So they have the current longest loss streak as they lost again. They got blown up by the Nuggets. But Charlotte, they're on a back-to-back because that happened last night. They're on a 3rd game in 4 nights. I think they're actually on a 4th game they're on a 4th game in 6, I guess, not a 3rd and 4, but a 4th and 6, I believe is the case. So they did back-to-back, 2 days off, and then another back-to-back. They're just not in a good rest spot, man. So I don't want to touch the Charlotte Hornets either, and there's no line on that game yet. And a couple of the lines have big spreads, so we'll see what happens. Celtics Thunder is the one like really interesting game on the schedule tonight. And the Celtics have gone down from a 4.5-point favorite to a 3-point favorite with juice, with 78% of the tickets on them, but 72% of the cash on the Thunder. The Thunder playing really well recently. Looks like kind of a dangerous matchup for the Celtics there, really, but there's nothing really situationally that makes me want to jump on that game. College basketball, there are a few interesting lines. I would say some suspect lines. I only have one play in college basketball right now. I would say that both Illinois and Purdue kind of have lines that look suspicious to me, and they are playing each other next. So they have a look ahead to each other next. Purdue and Illinois, that could be a big Big Ten matchup upcoming. Purdue is facing Maryland tonight. Purdue's down from a 7.5-point favorite to a 5.5-point favorite, where it almost looks too easy, to take Purdue there. But having to go out to Maryland is a tough spot, man. Maryland hasn't been in the Big Ten for that long. It's kind of a weird travel spot for Big Ten teams to have to go all the way over to the oh my God, I always have such bad heartburn in the morning. Go over to the East Coast there. So it looks too easy to take Purdue, but then you look at KenPom, and KenPom has this line at 10, so I just don't know what to do with that. I just don't want to deal with it. And same thing goes for Illinois, actually. Illinois is facing Northwestern, and Northwestern is, of course, the little brother to Illinois in the state of Illinois, in the Chicago area, in the Big Ten there. So Northwestern usually tends to step it up for games against Illinois. That's a home game for Illinois. Illinois is down from 7-5, so very similar line movement to the Purdue game as well. And KenPom, once again, has this game as a 10-point game as well, by the exact same score as well. Estimated score 76-66, I think. So it's weird that these two games mirror each other so much. It's just kind of strange. I do lean to Maryland and to Northwestern because the lines just look too easy to take Purdue and Illinois here. And Purdue and Illinois, like I said, they have a big look ahead to each other coming up in a couple days, which is a bigger game for both of them. So, but I have to stay off just because I don't know why the KenPom approximation of the score here. KenPom has the number at 10 on both of these games. So I don't know why it's so far off. So I just have to stay off of those. And then the other line that looks suspect is North Carolina at Pittsburgh. UNC, it's kind of a tough spot for them having to go into Pittsburgh, and UNC has Clemson up next, and Clemson has been playing quite well in the ACC so far, so that could be a look ahead as well. This line it looks like it's up, though, from North Carolina, 2.5 up to 4 with juice going through the 4. I would lean to Pittsburgh here, so my leans in those games are to what did I even say there? Maryland, Northwestern, and Pittsburgh in those games, just because I think it looks too easy to take the other side of those. The Pittsburgh one, I think, would be the strongest out of the 3 because KenPom actually has that line at 3, and you can get 4 or 4.5 right now with Pittsburgh. I'm tempted to do it. I don't know if I can quite get there with it, though. I won't list it as an official play on the show, at least. For now, I mean, I'm going to be watching these lines. Like sometimes you have to watch these lines and maybe make some like late plays. I probably won't do it, but again, it just looks too easy to take North Carolina there. North Carolina is a pretty big look ahead to Clemson. So that's the way I look at that. And it's a tough spot going into Pittsburgh. I think it is Pittsburgh's home opener there in the ACC. And if you kind of got to look at what these teams did, what these other teams did in their previous games as well. So like Maryland is coming off a game against Coppin State where Maryland didn't really play that well, really. So Maryland, now they have their home Big Ten opener there for Maryland. So you could maybe say that Maryland might be a little bit more focused on this. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game because they played Coppin State last and didn't do that well. Pittsburgh, in their last game, they played Syracuse, and they did not do well in that game against Syracuse. They had a lead earlier in the game, wound up blowing it. That was back a few days ago on the 30th. So Pittsburgh looked like they had that game in hand, wound up blowing it on the road. So I think this is Pittsburgh's conference home opener as well. And then as far as Illinois, though, I think it is Illinois' home conference opener, so maybe they'll still be focused on it. And they're up against a Northwestern team who has been playing pretty well recently, but Northwestern is also off of a game where they didn't win by that much against Jackson State and didn't cover, kind of similar to that Maryland previous game. It looks like both Maryland and Northwestern might have just been looking ahead to these bigger games here and just didn't totally put in a full effort against very lowly teams like Jackson State and Coppin State. So they did both win those games, but did not cover. So that does have me leaning in all those directions there to Pittsburgh, Northwestern, and to what was the other one I even said? Maryland. The game I'm actually on, as far as it is right now, is on Georgetown, even though it involves taking a bigger line. Georgetown really has not been a relevant team. They're in the Big East, haven't been relevant for quite a while, basically since like the Big East was the different Big East, where it was like the brutal Big East with UConn was still there, but they had like Louisville, Syracuse, BC was actually good back then. Pitt, like all those teams are just like really good, really physical teams. Did I say Louisville? I think I did. Yeah, all in the Big East. They're all beating each other up. Crazy Big East back then. Georgetown hasn't really been good since then, but I like the spot here. Or to better state it, I don't like the spot for Creighton very much. I mentioned I leaned Creighton in their previous game at Marquette, and they battled Marquette, man. They kind of gave Marquette all they can handle. Creighton jumped out to a pretty big lead in that game and held the lead for pretty much the whole first half into the second half, and then fizzled out a little bit. Marquette was able to take the lead away from them, but Creighton did not go away, kept the game close, like pretty much for the rest of the game. Tough game for Creighton, excuse me. Tough game for Creighton, tough way to lose that game, and that was a big game against Marquette. Really tough way to lose that game. I don't know if they're going to totally be able to get up off the mat for now. A second straight road game at Georgetown. Looks like they could get caught a little bit here, and they have Providence up next in 4 days, I believe on Saturday. They're playing Providence, another ranked team, one of the better teams in the Big East, Providence actually currently atop the Big East for now because they're 2-0 in the Big East so far with an 11-2 overall record, although I don't think they're actually the best Big East team. That is still a bigger matchup than this. This is a sandwich spot for Creighton. They just put a big effort in at Marquette. We're close to being able to grab that game. I liked Creighton to cover in that one, and they just missed covering by a point maybe or somewhere in that ballpark, 1.5. Now they have to go to the lowly Georgetown with Providence upcoming, laying 12.5. It looks like it's actually down from 13.5. I don't see the market percentages on this. Georgetown also just played at Marquette, by the way. So people might look at this and do that syllogism thing and see, well, Georgetown went into Marquette and lost by 30 points, and Creighton almost beat Marquette. So, of course, Creighton's going to just blow out Georgetown, right? Georgetown just lost to Marquette by 30, and Creighton played way better against them. Yeah, we know that Creighton is the better team over Georgetown here. I don't know if it looks too easy to lay that many points on the road there, but it's a bad spot for Creighton, man. Like I keep saying, they're in a sandwich spot. Georgetown, I think Georgetown might show up here because not only did they lose that game, even though it is to a good Marquette team, they lost by 30, which is an embarrassing loss. Georgetown has not played since then. That was before the holiday break, so they've had a lot of time off. They've had basically 2 weeks off, or not 2 weeks, but over a week off since then to get ready for this Creighton game. Whereas Creighton played that Marquette game the other day, basically. They played a few days ago, whereas Georgetown's just been sitting around after having lost their first 2 Big East games there. That might help them focus on this game and whip something up for this game. And they've had a lot of extra rest here, a lot of extra time to prepare for this game to break that losing momentum. I think that time's off going to help because Georgetown went into that break on such a bad note, losing not only to Butler by 10, but then losing to Marquette by 30. Even though it is Marquette, if you lose by 30 to anybody, man, you're going to want to turn it around after that. So I like Georgetown. I'm on it, plus 12.5. I think it's a spot where Georgetown should come focused here. They don't really have anything up next. This is a big game that I think will be able to focus on and have reason to focus on, bring some focus here. Whereas Creighton, it's like a down spot for them in the schedule. It's a sandwich spot, sandwiched between Marquette and Providence for Creighton. So I like it. I like Georgetown there. I'm on that one. And then in the NHL, I do actually have one play as well. In the NHL, there are some spots I was kind of looking at, but it's just tough to kind of identify these spots. Almost the entire NHL was off yesterday for the Winter Classic there. Unfortunately, I did not bet Seattle in the Winter Classic because they pretty easily won that game. So unfortunately for me there, but this slate is just kind of difficult to really find anything on this hockey slate, even though it's a pretty full hockey slate. I'm narrowing my focus, man. And the only play that I have, I don't even think there's that much worth even talking about here, even though Carolina and the Rangers is a pretty big game, at least, with the Rangers down from minus 125 on the money line to minus 113 on the money line with 96% of the tickets, but 89% of the cash on them. So the Rangers getting a lot of the public action there. Everybody knows the Rangers are really good, but Carolina is no pushover, man. So I think that's going to be an interesting game there. And the Rangers have the public action. It looks like the cash discrepancy is on Carolina, so that will be an interesting one there. The game that I'm actually on, I'm going back to the well, and I'm fading the Pittsburgh Penguins again, which did not work out the last time, which is a game I didn't even really actually bring up. Pittsburgh against the Islanders in the last game. The Islanders played them closer than the final score looked, man. That game wasn't totally out of reach for the Islanders. Pittsburgh did dominate the face-off percentage, but Pittsburgh played like a finesse team in that game. And in the Islanders, I think, were out shooting them for most of the game, at least, the shots wound up being 38-38. But the Islanders also were the way more physical team and out-hit Pittsburgh. I mean, that isn't really Pittsburgh's game, but they out-hit Pittsburgh 25-9. Pittsburgh, more of the finesse team than the Islanders are there. So the Islanders didn't play quite as bad as that final score looks there. But Pittsburgh now off another win. That's a decent win over a divisional opponent, I believe. They're in the Islanders. So now Pittsburgh's on a 3-game win streak. They just have the 1 day off, sitting at home, still on that win streak, maybe kind of basking in that. But what do they have up next? They have a very big advertised game, well-advertised game coming up in 2 days on Thursday against the Boston Bruins, man. That is a big game. The Bruins, still one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Pittsburgh might overlook a Washington team that hasn't been playing well as of late, man. Pittsburgh, They're on that 3-game win streak. Like I said, they're sitting at home, maybe basking that win over the Islanders. They've beaten the Islanders 2 out of the last 3 games, blowing them out on the road in the first of those 2. Then that St. Louis game, St. Louis was just in a terrible spot and had to go over to Pittsburgh for that weird 1-game road trip. I think St. Louis had it sandwiched in between Colorado and maybe some other good team. It was a bad spot for them. So they got caught there. Pittsburgh was easily able to win that game, but I wouldn't take that much away from Pittsburgh being able to beat St. Louis that easily. They're in such a bad spot for St. Louis. Pittsburgh, yeah, I mean, they played better than I thought they would in what was a revenge spot potentially for the Islanders. They beat the Islanders again. Now they got Washington coming in, though. Something's got to happen, man. Pittsburgh you can't maintain this effort like game after game like this. They got to have a down spot, and I think they might be more focused on the Boston Bruins game. It's upcoming here. They might not totally be focused on a Washington team that's not only been playing poorly and lost 4 games in a row, but they beat Washington the one time they played them this year, which was actually the opener of the season, I believe, for Washington. It was Washington's home opener. Pittsburgh went into their house and beat them 4-0. So because it was Washington's home opener, I think it was actually Pittsburgh's second game. Washington might actually remember that. So maybe Washington will have a little bit of extra motivation because they remember what Pittsburgh did to them there. Washington has had an extra day off compared to what Pittsburgh has here. They have 2 days off, whereas Pittsburgh only has 1. Washington might be able to use that extra day off to whip something up and maybe try to break that losing momentum there. They're leaving home after losing at home in a shootout to Nashville there. So leaving home and going on the road for this game might also help them focus on hockey and put those like home distractions aside. That was also a return home for Washington, although it was only from going to the 2 New York teams. But we know that the Rangers are really good and the Islanders are not a bad team either. So they lost those 2 games. They did lose badly, though, 5-1 in both of those. Then came home, returning home, and it was with no time off either. And it was a 3rd game in 4 days and a back-to-back, all in different venues, at least. I was going to say all in different cities, not quite, but all in different venues because 2 of them were in New York, but in different parts of the city, different venues there. So that was a tough spot for Washington, coming back home with no time off. And they played pretty well, but lost in the shootout to Nashville. Now I think they can focus, though. They get this 1-game trip to get away from home there, not think about the losing streak that they're on here, maybe refocus, just focus on hockey, focus on Pittsburgh. Whereas Pittsburgh, like I said, this kind of is sandwich-y at least because they're coming off a game against the Islanders, which I think is a little bit of a bigger win for them. Washington here, and then they got Boston upcoming. So they might be looking ahead to Boston, who is a better team there, even though Washington is actually tied with Pittsburgh in the division. So this is kind of a big game, but I think Washington has more reason to focus here. I think they have the better situation here. And as far as the market is concerned, Pittsburgh, they've gone down from -180 to -169 on the money line. They have 71% of tickets, but 86% of the cash. So it does look like they have the cash discrepancy, which I don't love, but I think they are the public team and the line has moved down on them. So maybe the actual money that's coming in might actually still be going against Pittsburgh there. I'm on Washington. I'm on the Washington Capitals plus, what did I take? Plus 145. So the only 2 plays that I have today right now, let's try to break this 2-game losing streak, man, where I had I had a bigger loss 2 days ago, but it was only by 1 bet. So it was like a 3-unit loss or whatever, basically. And then yesterday was just a very small loss with the 1-1 day yesterday. Let's get back on track today, man. Let's try to win these games here. So Washington Capitals plus 145. So I have a little bit less money on that to win the same amount that I'm betting to win on these other games. Washington plus 145 on the money line in the NHL. And then in college basketball, Georgetown plus 12.5. Let's get it, man. Let's do it. Let's have a good, feels like Monday because yesterday was a holiday. Happy New Year's, everyone. But it is Tuesday. Let's have a good Tuesday. Have a good day. Peace out, man.